Events like this are super important because it's exposure to these things, and it's so much easier to find some form of relation and connection to these things through like the exposure of having things on stage. Like there is, while this won't be in a theater and you won't get to experience it with everyone else, you can imagine, you can like, if you've been in a theater before, you can feel like what that energy would be in the space of experiencing something that's super anxietous, things that somebody who is experiencing PTSD, depression, anything like that. Like there is a level of emotion that exists in a room when that's going on, and to have that connection with a stranger 100 feet away or right next to you even is incredible, and not like anything else that you could experience anywhere else that is specifically like just for a theater. And while once again we won't get to have the in theater experience for this, the fact that it should still continue to exist and like be brought forth in a theater will have a completely different set of emotions versus watching a television show about it, you know? Hi, my name is Cassidy Tilden, and if you want to learn more about my play in the Talking It Out Festival, check out this video. So if I'm remembering correctly, because I've submitted work, when you're a playwright, you just kind of submit work everywhere, right? Just in hopes that maybe you'll get your name out there. If I'm remembering correctly, I believe it was on one of my regular sites that I check monthly. And it really fit my forms that I do for my 10-minute plays. My 10-minute plays typically take one of two different forms. One of them is a comedy area that deals with like an association with like death in a funny way, because I have a really weird relationship with death. I have lots of history there that we could get into, but we're not gonna right now. Or it's like dealing with some kind of mental illness in any way, because it was something that I struggled with a lot in college, is dealing with depression, anxiety, overworking myself, things like that are all like very prominent, and they continue to like scar over or like reemerge in different ways. And so seeing this fit my work perfectly, and it felt like I could definitely blend in with those things and like highlight certain things. So the piece that was selected, Amygdala, is about having an anxiety attack and how to deal with that in that moment. And typically when I write about things like that are like mental illness based, I try to like personify it and put it in a different way. Because like if you're having an anxiety attack, you could be experiencing it in different ways. You could be sitting in class, you could be at work doing whatever, you could be sitting at home by yourself and a little thought enters your brain and you're all of a sudden like done for. And that's like, you could be looking at someone and they could be having an anxiety attack and you could not know. You could be looking at them and you could totally know. So being able to personify that with like speaking to that part of your brain that you're dealing with really helps me understand it a little bit more and rationalize it for when I'm going through things like that. Because if I can rationalize it through pumping out words and like how I would go through it that way in a show form, then I know that there's someone else out there who could also like benefit from understanding that from that perspective as well. Because that's typically how I'm able to understand things more, is by rationalizing it through talking about it, writing about it, things like that. So by being able to sit down and be like, this is me rationalizing me having an anxiety attack. Typically it is me in my own brain shouting at myself anyway. So if I could have a person there to actually shout at, then other people might understand that a little bit better and like vibe with that too. It's about a character who is having an anxiety attack, kind of comes out of nowhere. The brain is who he is talking to. Very creative name there. The name is Brian. I thought it was hilarious because if you switch the I and A, it spells brain. Very creative on my end. But also giving a name to whoever it is that you're talking to definitely helps personify that even more and give it even more purpose. Because like by giving something a name gives it weight. So there's some weight to it and being able to like deal with that. So it's the process of rationalizing things that come through. There are things that don't matter that they have to rationalize. There are things that do matter that they have to rationalize. And the brain is just like throwing it at them one at a time. And then it's a matter of, do I sit here and do I take it and work out the anxiety attack? or do I go ahead and take this medication that I really don't want to take to help dumb it down and have to deal with it later? So I have not met the actors at all. I know that there have been opportunities to sit in on the rehearsal process. However, due to my work schedule, I've not been able to sit in and actually get to meet them yet at all. So when I get to watch it, it's going to be like everyone else watching it all together, of like having that new experience and getting to see it with new people, like experiencing it too at the same time. And honestly, that's kind of refreshing. And I've had that experience a couple of other times where I haven't sat in on the rehearsal process and I haven't really known the actors. And sometimes I think that's really nice and it's refreshing to bring that new perspective, and it really breathes some fresh air into it. Because there are times when I've worked with actors who I personally know and I've gotten to know, and it'll have a different effect versus if I don't know them at all. And I'm able to because if I know them, sometimes I end up putting their own personalities into the characters, and I let that end up overwhelming who the character is. Whereas if I don't know the actors, I really get to see the character as the character themselves. Because if you know someone, you're like, oh, this person's usually like this. And so adding that additional sprinkle personality that character might not necessarily have, versus someone fresh coming onto the scene who doesn't who you know nothing about, and you really get to experience that with them, and they are that character in that moment, I think brings something different to the page. So I'm very excited to see these actors perform this piece and get to experience it with them in the moment. I just hope that the audience is able to find something that resonates with them with this piece. I think that more so, I don't know if it's I wouldn't say that it's become a recent thing that people have experienced anxiety or anything. I think that it's more so that people are being less afraid of talking about it, which I think is a good thing, and that we should be able to open up and talk about these things. And for people to I hope that there's some kind of resonance there, so that people know that they're not alone when they're dealing with this stuff. There are other people out there who also have the same experience. Your brain might tell you really dumb things to stress out about, and that's okay, because other people are stressing about dumb things too. And it's just the human experience of sure, stress sucks, but you're not alone, and you're going to find a way to deal with it eventually, and hopefully you won't be alone when you are dealing with it. So hopefully things like that resonate with them, because my biggest thing is that even though things are stressful at times, and sometimes it feels like you can't get through that anxiety attack, there are other people who are dealing with it too. And there's some comfort in that, knowing that you are not alone in going through things like that. And that has also been my mantra for all of 2020 with all the terrible things that have been going on, is that at least we are all not alone in dealing with everything. So I'm very glad to have this opportunity to be able to experience at least plays in some type of way. I think that through the pandemic and us having to do shows in this manner has also exposed a lot of ways that theater can exist beyond the stage, which I think is very important, as well as being in a theater and experiencing it, but the exposure that you can have to other work via doing this. In addition to that, I think the pandemic has taught us that having some kind of access to shows virtually is of use, with the when Hamilton came out on Disney Plus at the beginning of the pandemic, and how people went nuts for it, and then they went nuts over Newsies and nuts over literally anything that was digitally on a streaming service. I think that having theater available for accessibility that's not just in physically in the theater is also very important, if not for just sitting down and recreationally watching it, but also for an educational standpoint, to be able to bring that into a classroom or something, to have students exposed to that and then analyze it from that perspective is also very important. So while I do miss theater in my heart and soul, and can't wait for the next moment that I can sit in a chair and experience everything with 1,000 strangers, I also think it's important to find ways to maintain the things that we've been doing through the pandemic with theater, and incorporating that into how theater will exist in the future. like people must watch the Talking Out Loud festival because of the mental health awareness that exists out there. Like I had mentioned previously, it is becoming more and more important to talk about mental illness, and it's becoming more and more prominent to do it. So sometimes the best way to experience it is through like a play where it's not like you're not actually sitting there being like, yeah, I have mental illness, but instead you're watching other people, characters that exist, expose it. Because like sometimes it's very difficult for people to talk about it and like say, hey, this thing is affecting me. But if you're seeing somebody else showcase that on stage through a reading, whatever, it's much easier to like connect with that character. It's like watching TV and say, I resonate with that character on TV and things like that. You like being able to resonate with the words on the page and like being able to identify like, hey, I'm like this, hey, I'm like that, and just being able to like make mental illness like more prominent, to like know that you're not alone and know like how to help people who might need help for those things. And because you aren't alone, and mental illness, while it does suck quite a bit, there are solutions out there, and there are other people who are going through it pretty hard with you. And I feel like I've said it quite a bit, that you're not alone, and that has some form of comfort in it, even if it's not exactly what anyone wants to hear at the time. To me, it has been the most comforting thing to think about whenever I am going through those things. My name is Cassidy Tilden, and if you enjoyed this, make sure you check out the Talking It Out Festival by going to the website and getting a ticket and checking it out.